One, two, one, two, three, Hot pants!
Have you ever wanted a character in JoJo who you think is a guy but isn't, that used to be a nun but is now an agent for the Vatican who is on a mission to collect the corpse parts of a very important saint, that also has the ability to spray human flesh and is named after a James Brown song? Well, if you said yes to any of those, then Hot Pants would be the character for you. So she was first introduced to JoJo in the 7th part, Steel Ball Run, at the beginning of the True Man's World arc, where she attacked our protagonists, Johnny and Gyro, by spraying flesh on them because she had thought that they killed her cow. But it turns out Johnny and Gyro didn't kill the cow, rather they just ate its meat, so although this made Hot Pants not want to hang them from a tree anymore, she still held a grudge for the remainder of the part, for the most part, so she was never really a true ally, just rather a neutral character who shared a common goal with the protagonist of obtaining the corpse parts, and would occasionally show up in the right place at the right time for her stand ability to be used for healing and utility and all sorts of different purposes that were just way too convenient at times. So let's talk about her stand, Cream Starter, and what's the deal with it? When we first see the ability used, it seems pretty simple, and the explanation provided was simple. The stand sprays out flesh in the form of cream or foam from the spray bottle that the stand is bound to, which is the stand. This is actually a very important detail because having a stand bound to an object can present the issue of you losing your stand, not being able to use your stand all the time, and even other people using your stand. Araki has stated in JoJo Veller that he simply wanted a stand that could spray stuff to let you transform stuff, and the way it functioned was based on shaving cream cans. I like to think that Araki comes up with some of these stand abilities by just putting a bizarre twist on the most mundane of things, like shaving cream cans, balloons, or even just hair, to name a few. But anyways, back to Cream Starter. So with an ability as simple as it is, the only thing you have to keep in mind is that the stand does not create the flesh it sprays. The flesh that comes out of Cream Starter has to come from somewhere, whether it be the user Hot Pants herself or someone that she is in direct contact with. And in the first time we see the stand used, it follows the rule pretty well. When Hot Pants used an excessive amount of flesh, we saw her left hand shrivel up and completely disappear as it came out of Cream Starter and detached from her body to be used remotely. So if Hot Pants could just create flesh, then she wouldn't need to sacrifice her limb, rather just be able to create an extra. So when Hot Pants attacks and heals people using just a light amount of flesh, it's safe to assume that the flesh being used on other people is just coming from parts of Hot Pants' body that aren't visible, or from a flesh reserve that she has by storing extra flesh from other people. So for the most part, Cream Starter actually made sense. But then when Steel Ball Run reaches about the Tubular Bells arc, I would say, Cream Starter begins to get a bit complicated. When Lucy, Steel, and Hot Pants team up to extort President Valentine of his corpse parts, Cream Starter seems to gain a bit more than just a new ability. So now it turns out that Cream Starter can actually be used to disguise people, not only their faces, but also their scent. And the actual mechanics of how this ability works can almost classify Cream Starter as an automatic stand. All Hot Pants does is spray some extra flesh on Lucy Steel and explains to her that all she has to do is touch the person that she wants to disguise herself as, and apparently just by doing that, the flesh added onto Lucy will automatically and perfectly replicate the appearance of whoever Lucy made contact with. And not only will the flesh given to Lucy change her face, but also somehow her hair and even her hair accessories. The character Lucy took the appearance of was Scarlet Valentine, who had much darker hair than Lucy and also just simply more hair. So how did just Cream Starter's flesh change Lucy's hair color, add more hair, and make it the same style as Scarlet's? I guess maybe it just appeared as hair, but if you were to touch it, it would feel more like flesh, but the more I think of it, the less sense it seems to make, because when Lucy's Scarlet face peeled off, the hair just changed into flesh, but I mean, it was hair, not flesh. Unless for some reason Cream Starter's spray can actually change the properties of its flesh and make it feel and look like hair. And if that's the case, then we're talking about a whole nother ability in itself. But onto Hot Pants' fight against the Tubular Bells user Mike O. Pretty obvious Mike Oldfield reference. So during this fight is where Cream Starter just starts to do a whole bunch of shit. But granted, this is Hot Pants' biggest fight of the part, where her and her stand are sort of the main focus, so it's not uncommon to see stands do a lot of creative things and sometimes even gain new abilities when put in a very intense situation or a very intense fight. But the thing I like about fights like Josuke and Kira is that Crazy Diamond doesn't gain any new abilities, but rather uses its abilities that have already been established to do creative things that do things that you wouldn't think could be used with that ability, using the stand's restoration ability for evasion and also long-range attacks. But the thing with Cream Starter is that its ability seems to just almost completely change to make it be good in this fight. Starting off, when Hot Pants first sees Mike O, she is seen coming out of a very small drain in the ground, and I guess that this just establishes that Hot Pants' ability can be used on her entire body, as she can pretty easily just melt herself down and stretch her body without even using the object that her stand is bound to. I mean, when the stand was first introduced, it was pretty simple that it is the spray can that sprayed flesh, and it was up to Hot Pants on how she would use that ability. But just a few volumes later, and now Cream Starter is more like a stand similar to Stone Free, as it's one with the body, essentially making your body your stand. And just a few panels after seeing Hot Pants melt her entire body down to pass through a drain, she is seen being able to extend her body parts and pretty much just being Mr. Fantastic. This attack still bothers me, as, I mean, the actual stand itself isn't doing anything. It's just Hot Pants' body that is being manipulated. And as she is extending her arm to a pretty serious length, no flesh is being taken away from any other part of her body, nor is any flesh being sprayed from Cream Starter, the stand itself. I mean, she still could have done an attack like this, but had her ability stay consistent by just constantly spraying her own arm, adding flesh to it, thus making it longer, while flesh would be taken away from her other arm. And as for Hot Pants being able to actually melt her body down, she still could have done that while keeping the stand's original ability, although it would have taken quite a bit longer, as she would have needed to spray her entire body through the stand, making it so her entire body is that foam and cream-like substance, allowing her to fit through that drain rather than just having it not make a whole lot of sense. I mean, it really doesn't make sense either way, whether she melts her body down itself or she transfers it through the stand. I mean, what happens to her bone and her organs? So I guess Cream Starter really can change the properties of things and turn anything into flesh, if she can turn things like her pelvis into flesh, because there's no way a bone like her pelvis would be able to fit through that drain. But I mean, once again, how did just flesh create hair and hair accessories and perfectly mimic the style of the hair? But whatever, what's the deal with Cream Starter? Another stand that seems to just work. But as much shit as I gave the stand in this video, it still is honestly one of my favorite stands in all of JoJo, and especially one of my favorite stands in Steel Ball Run, just because of, like I mentioned before, how mundane the idea of it is, but also how bizarre it is. And I should also probably mention the user Hot Pants definitely being in the top 5 JoJo babes. Anyways, like the video if you enjoyed, or if I fought your boredom, and of course subscribe for more videos. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. So like, what happens to her brain when it goes through the... She turns her brain into flesh and it just melts, or...